My discussion here will be about the difference between the Muslim Brotherhood and Al-Qaeda, because of course we look at them as the Muslim Brotherhood is the voice of reason that keeps us from the true face of Al-Qaeda. Doesn't that sound an awful lot like good cop, bad cop? And then we create this radicalization narrative. If I had my way, I would ban the use of the word radicalization. Why? Because what happens is we have the Brotherhood come and say, we really want to help you. Sanitize your language. Don't talk about Islam. And that way, we won't get radicalized. That way, Al-Qaeda won't strike. Well, of course Al-Qaeda won't strike because you have submitted. So I would just like to talk about that in relation to the media because here's one of the things I think has to be understood. Because there are no facts, there is no truth. And because there is no truth, everything is a matter of interpretation. And because everything is a matter of interpretation, anybody who would stand up for what they believe in is extreme. And anybody who would fight for it is a violent extremist. That would be everybody in our U.S. military who has taken an oath to support and defend the Constitution. Why is this important? Because that is at the core of the combating violent extremism narrative that the Department of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties at DHS constructed for their theory on how to engage in the war on terror. And the lead group of people they brought in to help construct that is members of the Muslim Brotherhood, including a man named Imam Mideast, who is the president of the Islamic Society in North America, unindicted co-conspirator in the Coughlin Foundation, in case no member of the Muslim Brotherhood. It is simply not an accident that if you pick up the last year's Time magazines and run through, or Newsweek, or New York Times, you will find that every time they start up talking about violent extremism, even if the first paragraph is about fighting the war on terror abroad, fighting Al-Qaeda, it always ends with people supporting the Constitution or wanting secure borders. There is an intentionality of associating anybody in this country who would stand up for what they believe with the same type of mentality abroad. And you see it. You see it in those nice crime-fighting shows like Criminal Minds, where they kind of build that into the narrative, or on CSI when they do that. Now, when we see that happening in foreign countries, we call that propagandizing. We call them information operations. Okay? And I would just like to say that there's absolutely nothing random about what you're seeing. It is intentional. And with that, because it's such a good jump into what I want to talk about, having to do with, good cop, bad cop, or gosh, we need the Muslim Brotherhood to help us subvert our own systems of national security so Al-Qaeda won't attack. Does that sound right? Because wasn't it the Muslim Brotherhood who told us we had to sanitize all our language about Islam so we cannot actually identify the nature of the threat? And doesn't that mean that no matter how many times we engage Al-Qaeda on the ground, it will always be just one more tactical victory that cannot be associated with any strategic or operational success, or operational only in the near term? Isn't it Al-Qaeda, isn't the Muslim Brotherhood who called for the, I just flat out call it the purge, because they called for a purge when they wrote a letter to Mr. Brennan when he was still in the White House demanding certain people get fired. So that now, if you make any reference to Al-Qaeda and bring up the fact that they might be engaged in the implementation of Sharia law and the reestablishment of the caliphate, that makes you a hater. And completely inappropriate. Because anybody who would believe something that firm, of course, is being extreme. Because remember, everything is just a matter of interpretation. So I would like to talk about a book written by a brigadier general of the Pakistani Army as a start off quote. I just wanted to kind of layer this in. That this is all extemporaneous. Everybody saw me feverishly putting my speech here together. A quote from a brigadier general, his name was S.K. Malik, and he wrote something called the Quranic Concept of War. And the Quranic Concept of War is the title of the book in a country that was and is an Islamic Republic. So the first thing you have to understand, and he was a general, and the chief of staff of the Pakistani Army accepted it. Okay, as an attorney general, as a brigadier general, he wrote this in an Islamic Republic, where the chief of staff and the advocate general of the country said, this is good stuff. Why is that important? Because it means that the very title of the book, given that he was a general, means that the government of Pakistan understands there's something to be a Quranic concept of war. Okay? And that might actually reflect policy. And that book was written the same year Edward Said wrote his book, Imperialism. A lot of things came up that year. So why is this important? Because he makes the point as a military perspective in the Quranic concept of war, that the main battle, the main engagement, the game, the Islamic concept of war, is in the preparation stage. It's the period that you undermine the other country's values, faith in their government, and reduce their thinking to incoherence. So he relied on a quote from the Quran to establish the fact that there is something called a Quranic concept of war, where you engage in the preparation stage. And I would like to read that quote. It's verse 860. Against them make ready your strength to the utmost of your power, including steeds of war, to strike terror into the hearts of the enemies of Allah and your enemies and others besides, who you do not know, but whom Allah doth know. So if there's a Quranic concept of war according to this quote, what type of war is it? It uses the T word. Terror. Okay? And you do that in the preparation stage. Now, if you ever take a close look at the Muslim Brotherhood motto, you will see there's some Arabic scripting. At the very bottom of that motto, it says in Arabic, against them make ready. Well, that would be the same as I pledge allegiance if that was on the motto of an American thing. Everybody would know what the rest of it is. And what it's telling you is of the Muslim Brotherhood says their whole orientation to the world is to, against them make ready your utmost of your power, including steeds of war. Okay. Interestingly enough, this spring, at exactly the same time, in the same season that we had the Boston bombing, Al-Qaeda came up with a special edition of their Aspire magazine. And the name of the book, the name of the special edition is called The Lone Mujahid Pocketbook, a step guide on how to become a successful lone mujahid. Right? And what did it say at the very top of this lone mujahid pocketbook? It said, and prepare against them to the utmost of your power. So now we have a government, the government of Pakistan, saying that you prepare as the main effort. You have the Muslim Brotherhood who said that's always been the game. Think about this. They forswear terrorism and violence because right now they're in the preparation stage, creating the situation so that when terror strikes hard, you'll fold like a bad souffle. You'll have lost confidence in your religious institutions. You'll have lost confidence in your political institutions, your community institutions. You will think your generals don't know anything. You'll wonder why your priests, ministers, and rabbis do interface with the Muslim Brotherhood, and that the Muslim Brotherhood will rely on them to shut you up because they're in this special relationship. How many people know what I'm talking about? How many people don't know what I'm talking about? Okay? So I just want to point out that when everything pops and people go and they go to the religious institutions, and they look at their leader, minister, rabbi, priest, okay, and say, you're one of the people who brought us here. And then you remember that General S.K. Malik said one of the principal goals in the preparation stage is the dislocation of faith. Think about that. And the very act of working with people who publish their books in English, saying how this is a triple IT book, triple IT, International Institute of Islamic Thought, known Muslim Brotherhood organization. They wrote this book in English. How are we going to subvert these people? And you know, we can rely on the fact that they're so dumb that they won't even get our book. And we'll convince them that what they just read, it didn't mean that. How many people know how many people have experienced that or been right in that orbit? Okay, so I think it's very important. So one of the things that said in that Aspire magazine special edition was a republication of how to build a bomb in your mother's kitchen. This Aspire magazine, the Lone Mujahid pocketbook, which was what they said in volume 1. So here's the question as we get to the question of the relationship between Al-Qaeda and the Muslim Brotherhood. Okay? Paragraph 17 of the explanatory memorandum, which is the strategic document of the Muslim Brotherhood in America that was written in 1991, admitted into the Federal Court of Law in the Holy Land Foundation case as evidence that they actually do have a strategy, Paragraph 17 basically says that the Muslim Brotherhood's goal is to build mosques that they call Islamic centers, because Islamic centers are not normal mosques. They're like mosques in the period of the time when the Prophet Muhammad went to Medina, which is to say that they're mosques that are organized for combat. And we don't have to speculate on that, because paragraph 17 says that one of the rules of the Islamic centers, in any institution in this country that says Islamic Center of or Islamic Society of, there's a 99% chance that you're 3,000% correct every time, and you will know that that's a Muslim Brotherhood organization. Okay? It is honestly that simple to put this together. Okay? So are they Muslim brothers when they prepare the battalions, and only Al-Qaeda when they actually walk out the gate and shoot? I mean, it's not like we don't have history on this. Al-Amudi, who's now a Supermax, we know him as a major Capitol Hill leader who was a member of CARE, ISNA. He created the DOD and the Department of Corrections chaplain program. Okay? But he's in jail for being an Al-Qaeda funder. How many people knew that? So was he Muslim Brotherhood when he was doing all those things we pretended was not what it was? And then he was radicalized, and all of a sudden things changed overnight, and then he's Al-Qaeda? Or was he both all the time? Was Anwar al-Awlaki, from the time the FBI first started monitoring his activities in 1999, were they monitoring him because he was not radicalized, or because he was? Because then he was representing himself as MAS, or MSA, Muslim Student Society, in CARE. And he was the Imam of the Dar al-Hijra Mosque down in Northern Virginia, a moderate Islamic center. Okay? Was it that we said something that radicalized him, and if we just didn't say that? How about Major Hassan? Okay? My question here is, how often will we do that? Because build a bomb in your mother's kitchen is the name of the chapter where they teach you how to build pressure cooker bombs in Al-Qaeda's street manual. And the person who did that in America, Tsarnaev, was also a member of the Islamic Society of Boston, which everybody knows was radicalized, but it's because people were making YouTubes about it years before this happened. Oh, incidentally founded by Al-Amudi. And one of their trustees was a man named Yusuf al-Qawadari, who was we'll call the chief jurist of the Muslim Brotherhood. So I don't want to belabor this point because I think I'm on a timeline, but I just would like you to think that when we say insane, when we say, oh, Al-Qaeda is insane, or, oh, Al-Qaeda is radicalized, do you know what we're doing? We're saying because this is a departure from reality-based thinking, because they're not acting rationally, there's no need to look at why they said they acted. Because, of course, they're crazy. They're nuts. And then we decide that now we're going to hire social scientists to go look at this. We're going to go hire, psychologists, anthropologists, and they're going to give us an anthropological explanation for something they have no conception of, to explain events that are not real all along. Not talking about the fact that these people are a consistent message killing people in the name of Islam, where we have the Muslim Brotherhood of America talking about having us do things that make us unable to win this war. Anybody see the relationship there? How many people know who the founder of Al-Qaeda was? Now I'm blanking on his name. What's his name? Thank you, you saved me. Abdul Azzam. How many people know Abdul Azzam was a member of the Muslim Brotherhood? How many people think when he died he wasn't still a member of the Muslim Brotherhood? Who? You don't think so? Of course he was. Of course he was. How many people know that the number two, he's really been number one for a long time, Ayman al-Zawahiri, was a member of the Egyptian Islamic Jihad, which was just the militant wing of the Muslim Brotherhood. It turns out that just about everybody who was anybody in Al-Qaeda was also a Muslim brother. And it's really this simple. And I want to end with, how much time do I have? A couple minutes?
10 seconds.
10 seconds. To give. Maybe on Q&A I'll give them.
Keep rolling.
Keep rolling? Oh, okay. In 2010, I was asked to write a paper for a certain government agency that basically talked about the fact that you have three types of entities in the Islamic world that we'll address right here. And then it gets more complicated, but I narrowed it down. You have the Ummah entities. those entities in the Islamic world that represent state power. And you could say it's the OIC and the member states of the OIC, all 57 member states. Okay, 56 plus the Palestinian Authority. Okay, however you want to designate them. You have Dawah entities, and their job is to have the call to Islam, which is actually a little more than just a call to Islam. It's the whole preparation stage. And then you have the jihad elements, and we'll call it the preparation stage would be groups like the Muslim Brotherhood. And then finally you have the jihadi elements like Al-Qaeda. And what holds them all together, and what keeps them all on the same narrative, isn't that they have different views of the world. It's that each of those has to have different functions within a different period of Islamic, within the context of Islamic law, given a period of time. So that you can kind of figure out where each of these are by virtue of the fact that they're communicating based on something called the milestones process, which we will go into here, that tells them where they're all at. I just want to say that because I'd like to give you a definition of one of the requirements of jihad, and I'm going to give you 3 more quotes, just to give you a sense for, are these people really miles apart, our coalition partners in Al-Qaeda? I'm not saying that our coalition partners are aligned with Al-Qaeda, but I just want to give a sense for how there's a commonality of message that I think we miss. This comes from Book O, Justice section on Jihad from Alliance of the Traveler. So it is undisputed. It's published in Islamic law. Jihad is also personally obligatory for everyone to be able to perform it, male or female, young or old, when the enemy has surrounded the Muslims on every side, having entered our territory, even if the land consists of ruins, wilderness, or mountains. For non-Muslim forces entering Muslim lands is a weighty matter that cannot be ignored, but must be met with efforts to repel them by every possible means. Every possible means. That means there are no rules that have to be applied to get the non-Muslim forces out of Islamic lands. Is the United States a non-Muslim force in Islamic lands? I mean, I would just like to point out the fact that that is true. It is a fact. Does the Islamic world see us that way? Let's take a look. Of course, nobody will be surprised that the original 1998 fatwa from Al-Qaeda came out and said, calling for jihad against America. On that basis, and in compliance with Allah's order, we issue the following fatwa to all Muslims. The ruling to kill the Americans and their allies, the civilians and the military, is an individual duty for every Muslim who can do it in any country in which it is possible to do it in order to liberate the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Well, that actually is not America, is it? Okay? And the Holy Mosque, Mecca, from their grip, and in order for their armies to move out of all lands of Islam, defeated and unable to threaten any Muslims. Now, that was the fatwa against the United States, but how about 2009 when the Supreme Guide of the Muslim Brotherhood, at the time, Akaf, made this statement? Allah commanded us to wage jihad. Jihad is a personal duty incumbent upon every Muslim man and woman because the lands of the Muslims have been destroyed. They have become fair game for every corrupt oppressor. You see, both of these are tracking with the statement of Islamic law. So their claim will meet summary judgment in a court of law. They're able to say they articulated something that actually exists in Islamic law. But here's the thing I want to end with, and I will end it here. The OIC, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, represents all the Islamic states at the head state level. Here's what they said. And of course, they use different words. I want to see if you can see it, though. The Islamic League Council stresses that the martyr operations are a form of jihad, and carrying out those operations is a legitimate right that has nothing to do with terrorism or suicide. Those operations become obligatory when they become the only way to stop the aggression of the enemy, defeat it, and grievously damage its power. Now, the OIC, our coalition partners, put that out at the time we were taking huge casualties from suicide operations. But you see, every element of those 3 major players, the Ummah entity, the Dawah entity, and the Jihad entity, the OIC, the Muslim Brotherhood, and Al-Qaeda, they were all on the same sheet of music. And in fact, they were from the beginning. And this is the point. Al-Qaeda gets to run free because we're not even allowed to actually define who they are, so that we'd understand that when they claim to fight jihad according to Islamic law, that became a requirement to understand Islamic law for no other reason than to find out how they make decisions to then engage and defeat them. But Al-Qaeda isn't the organization that made it very difficult for us to look there. It was the Muslim Brotherhood domestically who did it. It was the OIC making demands through their 10-year program of action to make this, the very discussion of it illegal. So I would like to think that it is true that there are differences between Al-Qaeda and the Muslim Brotherhood, but I think it's important that we also take a look at the fact that there's a unity. And in certain instances, that unity of effort is greater than the oppositional forces pulling them apart that we like to think can be exploited, and they haven't. Thank you very much.